Well, good afternoon, everybody, and whoa, there we are again. Just the titles are all over the place today. Yeah. We're so professional here. Welcome back. The Atheist Experience is live July 14th, 2002. Thank you for joining us on this muggy Sunday afternoon. I'm your host, Martin Wagner. Ashley Perrien is my co-host. This show is sponsored by Atheist Community of Austin. We're a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. ACA holds weekly meetings every Sunday morning at Hot Jumbo Bagels, 307 West 5th Street, downtown between Guadalupe and Lavaca, with the exception of the first Sunday of every month, when we have our lecture series in the Longhorn Room of Fur's Cafeteria at North Cross Mall. Our next lecture, will be, I guess, first Sunday in August, and that's going to be, what, the NLP guy?
Yes, yeah. NLP Jason Quadier or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact name. But
well, it's on our website, I do believe.
NLP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Poitier?
Yeah,
No.
Well, the name is, yeah. Okay,
it's
well,
C something or other.
Well, it should be on our upcoming events thing on our website. So that's what's happening. Where am I? Longhorn Room, First Cafeteria, did that. Lecture series, next one. Gamers, right. Gamers! Godless Gamers is a little activity we do Monday nights, 7 o'clock p.m., home of Russell and Virginia Glasser. And Atheist Community of Austin Happy Hour is a Thursday evening event that takes place at about 7:30 p.m. at Antonio's Tex-Mex near the intersection of I-35 and Highway 183. People tend to trickle in throughout the evening, so if there's no one around when you first get there, hang out, because some people will show up eventually throughout the evening. Apparently, Jeff Jones and Jill Ford had their Bastille Day party last night, which I was dying to go to, and I utterly spaced on. I thought it was this coming weekend for some reason.
It was a good party. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm sorry I missed that. So
talked about teaching math and the dolphins and the nature of matter and so.
Yeah, presumably there's
all the stuff that you normally talk about when you're completely stoned.
Yeah.
Completely drunk and sitting outside at 11 o'clock at night.
Okay. Well then, let's see what I missed. All right. So I'm sorry. So sorry, Jeff. Sorry, Jill. I really wanted to go to that and missed that. Okay, The Non-Prophets is our internet radio show, which plays on the atheistnetwork.com website, 2 o'clock in the afternoons every Saturday. Show is hosted by Jeff D. It's co-hosted by Mary McManamy, Vic Farrow, and Russell Glasser. And it's all kinds of fun. It's an hour-and-a-half internet radio show. There's the time and place, and your web browser will need the Real Player plugin to hear the audio stream, and there's a live chat room feature that runs concurrently with the show, and you can participate in the show. And sometimes they remember to interact with the chat room when they're not so into what's being talked about on the show. They're like, oh yeah, there's people in the chat room saying stuff. But it
was brought up yesterday about that quote by George Bernard Shaw.
George Bernard Shaw, which had to do with...
That was pretty good.
Russell got into this brief exchange. Apparently there's a Christian radio station here in town, and the radio host is constantly on his show, whining that, atheists we're all miserable and unhappy and depressed, sad people. And Russell called him up and said, well, I'm a happy guy. And, and the fellow made an issue out of that for some weird reason.
Prove your happiness.
Yeah, as if how happy a belief makes you has anything to do with the truth of it. Yeah. Right? It has nothing to do with anything. Yeah, and... but it was a pretty funny, brief exchange there, and they quoted George, one of the chat room participants, pointed the George Bernard Shaw quote yesterday, which is something to the effect of, saying that a religious man is happier than a non-religious man is no more to the point than saying somebody who's drunk is happier than somebody who's sober, right? So anyway, so that's. Just a brief example of the kinds of fun that you can have on the Non-Prophets radio show. So tune into that. The Godless Americans March on Washington is still tentatively slated for November 2nd, 2002. And you can go to godlessamericans.org website for that information. We're still, I know that we're chewing on getting some folks out there to go to that, because, it's a good...
ways off.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it.
But plenty of time to plan, which is good about it. And so I think that takes care of the announcements, unless there's, what else is coming up that I need to know about?
I believe Happy Hour is somewhat canceled this week, but it will be announced on the email list as to the alternative, I would assume.
Okay.
And also the bagel shop is closed next week.
Oh, okay. What's up with that?
I don't know. They just said it was closed, and so I don't know what's up with that.
Yeah.
So we will not be at the bagel shop next week. If you get on the email list, I think Michelle is going to make an executive decision and just say, we're having it here.
Yeah, we're going to figure out a place and what have you.
So we had to talk about that this morning.
Okay.
So.
All right then. So, good. For more information on the ACA, you can visit our lovely website, which I've already mentioned, atheist-community.org, or call our voicemail 371-2911. Okay, well, without further ado, let's get going on that news. What do we have? It's a busy week, is it not?
Yes, a surprisingly busy week in terms of news.
Very busy.
Okay, we'll go for the first one. It's a big story of the week that many people in Texas, at least, have heard about, I'm sure. And now it's going even national.
Yeah.
Texas boy allegedly beaten in Bible study. Austin police arrested a church pastor and his twin brother Tuesday, alleging they had used a tree branch to beat unconscious an 11-year-old who misbehaved in Bible class. Joshua Thompson, 22, a pastor at the Capital City Baptist Church, and his brother Caleb turned themselves in Tuesday and were released on $25,000 bond. They were charged with injury to a child, a felony punishable by up to life in prison. The alleged beating took place July 3rd. The brothers thought the boy did not take his Bible verses seriously enough during a church-sponsored summer camp for Spanish-speaking students. The alleged abuse took place in a private home, said Bobby Taylor, the child's attorney. They cut a tree branch off of a tree, made my client lay on the bed, and beat him. Court records obtained by Reuters allege that the beating lasted for 90 minutes, broke blood vessels, and caused the boy's kidneys to fail. The brothers allowed the child to take a break in the restroom during the reported beating.
Oh, well, that's big of them.
Yeah, they're not that bad.
Yeah.
Joshua Thompson beat the child while Caleb Thompson held him down. They reportedly turned up a radio to drown out the child's cries.
Oh.
Afterward, the two took the boy back to his home, where Joshua Thompson told the parents the child needed further discipline.
Man, well, that's brass balls for you, right? I mean, you beat a kid nearly to death for an hour and a half, and then you drop him at his house, and you tell his parents, oh, he needs to be beaten some more.
Yep.
We just beat your kid for an hour and a half, and we think he needs more of it.
Blood vessels are broken. He's bruised. It was using a tree stick. His kidneys has failed, but keep it up.
I think Dad would have been fully within his rights to shoot them both dead at that moment. I mean, that's just... Now, but here's what is so profound. This is the most profoundly despicable thing that has come along.
Yeah.
At least since the whole Catholic, the sexual molestation stuff, right? But this is this is worse, I think, in a lot of ways. Because there's definite profound physical injury in addition to the psychological damage that's caused by this. The child the sexual abuse victims of all the Catholic priests, and and that's been out of the news for a while, but it's still very much a relevant thing that people need to not forget happened and is going on and was covered up, and nobody. So that's not to discount the importance of that, but here you have, those kids, the lasting damage to them is going to be the psychological damage.
Yes.
That's the whole thing. Here you have, in addition to that, this kid's kidneys failed, right? He needed massive blood transfusions.
I believe he's in fair condition.
He's lucky he didn't die. Okay, these guys have been arrested, and if you see them on the news, they're smiling, they're very smug, they seemed extremely pleased with themselves. But what's incredibly despicable about this is that, when you get right down to it, it can all be tied back to the beliefs.
Oh, yes.
It can completely be tied back to the beliefs. The corporal punishment, physical abuse of children, is a thing that is referred to repeatedly in Scripture. And I have the Scripture quotes right here. And these guys...
I can even go to the articles where they talk about that.
Yeah, and these guys boast about it.
They explicitly say it.
Right.
An Austin pastor and his twin brother, blah, 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 belonged to a church that advertised itself as independent fundamentalist and old-fashioned. The church pastor and his father of the two defendants said he doesn't allow corporal punishment, but the church preaches strict adherence to the King James Version of the Bible, which includes passages on corporal punishment.
And in fact, and what are those passages? Well, we have them here.
I don't know. Enlighten us, Martin.
Well, the book of Proverbs is the big, seems to be your best source for, your little how-to child abuse list. Just to quote from a few of them here, in Proverbs 22:15, you get the main one. This is the famous one. Foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. The rod of correction will drive it far from him. So, beat your kid to stop him from being foolish, essentially. And then in the following chapter, in Proverbs 23, verses 13 to 14, you get this. Do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. Get massive kidney failure, but he won't die, right? So it's not like beating's a big deal. I mean,
it's not that bad.
You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. Okay? And let's see, the love continues. Later on here we have in Proverbs 29:15, where it states, the rod and rebuke give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings shame to his mother. And then earlier on, there's a couple ones. Now notice here, there's no real, here's the only scripture that seems to set any kind of limits to just how much beating you're precisely supposed to do.
As long as he doesn't die.
Well, right, yeah. But here's the, because that's essentially all it says, right? Yeah. Chasten your son while there is hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction. So I guess that means you can beat him almost to death.
Yes.
But, stop.
Just a hair shy and you're okay.
Stop short of that, and then we can flip back even more. Oh, here's one way back here in Proverbs 13:24, he who spares his rod hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines him promptly. So again, these repeated exhortations to physical punishment, physical beatings as being the tool of correction.
Even beside this book, you remember they brought up on the radio show yesterday, and we had that talk a while ago.
Yes.
On shepherding your child's heart. Which talked extensively about how to beat your child and then justify it.
Yeah, that's now. Do you have that Christian magazine you usually bring?
No.
Yeah, so you have it because it has.
1 week I didn't bring it.
Yeah, because where it has that big full-page ad for that book.
Full-page ad on the book, the video series.
Oh, great.
The audio tapes. It's a full series.
Anyway, it's this book that we talked about. The radio show discussed it, and then we talked about it the next day. And Russell got his hands on this because apparently they have a, well, I don't want to get into the personal aspects of it, but this book was given to them as a gift because they just had this new baby. Yeah. And it's this Christian child-raising manual, and which ends up being
5 rods.
At least half of its length is this lengthy treatise excusing and justifying beating your kids.
Yes.
And what is even more profoundly creepy about it is that there's one passage in there where it says, now, the law frowns upon this stuff, so when you beat your kids, make sure, I'm paraphrasing, right? Because it never actually says beat your kids. It tries to make it sound a little more nicey nice than that, right? But it says...
Not by much.
Yeah, but it says, make sure that you go off and do this somewhere private.
Yeah.
So it's telling you not only should you abuse your children, but make sure you conceal the fact you do it. It's got to be the big nasty secret.
Yep. And you do that with a tree branch. You make sure you turn the radio up.
Make sure you... Right, exactly. So these guys were apparently following that advice. I don't know if they read that book, but, turning up the... By turning up... See, I think that is where these guys are going to get their conviction, right? Because clearly, that's going to be an indication they knew what they were doing...
They knew what they were doing was wrong.
...would be frowned upon, to say the least, by the community. So they turned up the radio to conceal the screams, so that no one would burst in and what the hell are you guys doing
during this hour and a half beating.
So that's what's going to get them their conviction, and I hope it's what's going to get them their life without parole. So where they can get a little bit of rough justice of their own, because we all know that prisoners, inmates have their own sort of code, right? And there's nothing. I've heard this repeatedly from law enforcement guys. Nothing that the average prison inmate hates worse than a child abuser. Because most of them suffered it, and that's why they turned out the way they turned out. So...
So you put a priest in their midst?
So these, so the Thompson twins
won't
be smiling if they end up in prison very long. So, but this is...
And now just to go over this really quickly again, the facts are they beat him for an hour and a half, broke blood vessels, his kidneys fail, he's in hospital.
Right.
They knowingly did this and concealed it by the radio and so on. And so what do some of the people at the church have to say about it?
Oh.
Well, one or two of them are saying, look, this is just too much and we're going to leave.
Yes. Yeah,
However,
I applaud the people.
Yes.
However few there were who walked away from this church as a result of this.
At least one member said he's leaving the congregation because of the abuse allegations.
Well, that's at least one person in that church that has a conscience.
Yeah. However, other church members said the incident is being blown out of proportion.
Oh, well, yeah.
It definitely
What's the
has
big
made
deal
it,
about beating a kid nearly to death with a stick?
It definitely has made it more difficult for us to practice our faith.
Good. Good.
Again, the facts here. Kidneys failed.
Yeah.
It was a tree branch.
Yes.
It was 90 minutes. These are facts. It wasn't, it's not like beating. Well, what is beating? Beating, a little spank
it's not
versus
like
taking
you're
your
not gonna
belt.
swat. Yeah.
That's
spank,
all in the beating range, possibly.
Open hand, spank, belt, or tree branch.
Yes.
Okay. I mean,
But
how
these
far
are
do you
the
want to take
facts.
it? Golf club?
A tree branch.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's...
and if it's making it harder for them to practice their faith, fine. Because apparently, the type of faith that they practice is extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
Okay? And we do not need to have this sort of culturally condoned activity that is this dangerous in our society.
Yeah.
It's not good for anyone.
Yeah. But Beatty, who apparently is somebody in the...
But again, it can all be tied back to the beliefs, and I do not think that anybody can condemn these men for doing what they did if they are not also willing to condemn the passages that I just read.
Yes.
Okay, which exhort this sort of behavior.
Yeah.
It's like these are the instructions, right? Okay,
What
and if
they,
these guys
did was fully condoned in the Bible.
Exactly, and so it seems to me that if you, I'm sure that what we're going to get is you're going to hear a lot of people in the religious community trying to squirm and have it both ways by saying, oh well, obviously we don't, this is apparently incredibly appalling, and and this isn't the Christian thing to do. Well, it's in the scriptures, and if you're not willing to look at those passages and say, yeah, those are wrong because clearly those passages can be used to justify what happened to this little boy. You can't have it both ways. I don't think that you can condemn the Thompson twins, who did this without also, you have to condemn this as well. If you want to have any sort of honesty and not be just completely disingenuous about your position.
Yep.
So, that's just my feeling on it. But,
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah.
Okay, well... That is actually enough of that one for the moment.
We'll be following this one very closely, and we'll let you know. I mean, I've noticed it hasn't. Nothing's been in the Statesman the last few days about it. So I guess it's just...
There was a story in there. It may not have been updated since, but I have seen a link to...
Well, these guys got bailed, right?
Yes.
And so, but we don't know if they've set a trial date yet.
I didn't see any of that, no.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that
I read over the articles. I didn't see anything about a trial date. So.
Okay. Well, I'm sure that will be announced when the time comes.
Yeah. Hopefully keep a good eye on that one. Hopefully get follow-ups eventually.
Right.
Okay, next story. Astonishing skull unearthed in Africa.
Oh, you get positive news.
Yes, some positive news for a while.
Good. I wanted to be depressed for the whole show.
BBC News Online staff. This is a picture of recently discovered unearthed human-like skull, which described the most important find of its type in living memory. Scientists say that is the most important discovery in the search of the origins of humankind since the first Australopithecus ape man remains were found in Africa in the 1920s. The newly discovered skull finally puts to rest any idea that there might be a single missing link between humans and chimpanzees. Henry Gee, senior editor at the scientific journal Nature, said that the fossil made it clear how messy the process of evolution had been. It shows that there wasn't a nice steady progression from ancient hominids to what we are today. The skull is so old that it comes from a time when the creature which were to become modern humans had not long diverged from the line that would become chimpanzees. There were very few of these creatures around relative to the number of people in the world today, and only a tiny percentage of them were ever fossilized. Right. And let me see if I can even pronounce this. Sahelanthropus chadensis.
There, yeah, that's close enough.
Close enough. as the fine has been named.
Yeah, you actually wonder why they just, I guess it's just the standard operating procedure in science to give it a good, nice sounding Latin name.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just wish, when every time they discover something, why can't they just give it a good name that like normal folks can, like Murray, okay? Like why not just?
Well, they had Lucy.
Well, right, Lucy. Right.
Which, granted, was just the nickname for something.
Right, but that's that's good PR, right? I mean, everybody can you can comprehend Lucy.
Everyone can love Lucy.
Give them some 18-syllable Latin name, and then it gets a little difficult. So I say we call this guy Murray.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, there we go. That's
Murray, as the fine has been named, may turn out to be
by us.
May turn out to be a direct human ancestor, or it may prove to be a member of a side branch of our family tree.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really, really interesting. I mean, science marches on, and
yeah,
we've had a lot of these sorts of things lately where, like in astronomy, for example, there have been, within the last year or two, many discoveries that we've had that have caused, the whole field to sort of rethink a lot of its ideas. Yeah. And now we're getting that with, the fossil record and with evolution, and it's really interesting to see. And what's fascinating about this is that we're not sure how many, hominid species may have been where there were false starts and just that didn't work out. And
because it was not, chimpanzees, Australopithecus, this one,
it's not this,
Cro-Magnon and stuff like
whole idea that
leading
there's just
up to us.
Very smooth track.
Yeah.
No, there's just branches going all over the place, and we have
just the one that made
barely scratched the surface of everything there is to really know about it, which is kind of what's cool about it. So, neat.
So
we'll just see what more research finds. Yeah.
Okay, and go over this one too. Why not?
Okay.
A Riverside woman. This is one actually that somebody called in last week.
That's right. There's a caller called in,
and he had mentioned about this story, and didn't really have any details. Well, I managed to dig it up.
Yeah.
A Riverside woman was awarded $500,000 late Thursday afternoon in her Equal Employment Opportunity lawsuit against the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Vicki Allen Curry complained of religious discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and constructive discharge, meaning she came under pressure to retire. An 8-member jury at the federal courthouse in Houston ruled unanimously in Allen Curry's favor on all 3 points. She was required to participate in mandatory monthly staff meetings when her supervisor was not able to attend. She said Unit Warden Richard Watkins required everyone in attendance at the meeting to stand in a circle for an opening and closing prayer, which she feels is against her religious freedom. Yeah. Based on my religious beliefs, it's a very personal matter who I pray with and what I pray for, Allen Curry said. I asked the warden to excuse me, and I asked him to let me come in late and miss the opening prayer and leave early, and he would not let me. He ordered me to attend and told me if I did not attend, I would be disciplined. Allen Curry, an 18-year employee at the time for retirement, said she was brought up on disciplinary charges of insubordination and was found guilty and given the harshest penalty allowed by the agency policy. Watkins suspended me for 5 days, put me on probation for 4 days. When I came back from suspension, my duties had been changed, and the work environment was very hostile. And that's really it.
Well, and which this is exactly the point of all of these. The reason why there are constant attempts to block such things as prayer in school, government-sponsored religion. Now,
will get out of hand.
Or any sort of situation where people who just don't want to do it, and this woman's not an atheist woman, right?
No.
Yeah, so she has...
It's against her religious freedom.
See, this is the whole point here, is that it's not just atheists who have a problem necessarily with these kinds of public displays of compulsory religious practice. Is a lot of religious people, profoundly religious people who take their beliefs very seriously, don't want to have someone else tell them this is how you're going to pray. No, religion.
This is what you're going to pray for.
Religion is a private matter to the believer, and when you have suddenly the government saying, okay, well now everybody has to say blah 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 under God, or God this or God that, or dear God the other. That is starting to infringe. It's not just upon the rights of atheists who don't want to have any part of that kind of practice, but people in the religious community who quite correctly think, hey, my beliefs are my business, don't want to be compelled to do something that goes against the way they choose to practice their faith.
Yes.
And what happens, clearly what's happened with this woman, is that when you have this big red letter on your forehead,
Yes.
when you don't want to participate, and suddenly you find yourself in an extremely hostile environment, and nobody should have to put up with that, and be ostracized and made a pariah in that way.
Yeah.
This one was probably a perfectly great employee, got along with all of her coworkers just fine. She was put in this position, has nothing to do with her job performance.
Nope.
This is the danger of having this kind of public. Compulsory religion. This is why we fight against it. This is why we don't have a theocratic government. But the religious right just can't see that.
Yeah. And again, this was a state job. It wasn't a private company that was doing this.
So
Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Mm-hmm. So.
Buzzing fly in here.
Yeah.
Oh well. It's a fly on the wall.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah, we got time for a couple more. We'll let some calls rack up and then.
Politicians dissent from religious speech. Several politicians moved yesterday to distance themselves from a minister's comments about immigrants and at a church-sponsored patriotic rally Tuesday night. Lexington mayoral candidates Scott Crosby and Teresa Isaac, who also attended at the event in Applebee's Park, also distanced themselves from Fugate's claims that opponents of Christianity should go into exile and that non-Christians shouldn't bring their religions with them when they immigrate to the United States. The rally, which attracted 5,000 people, included short patriotic speeches by Fletcher and former Governor Brereton Jones, and lengthy sermons by 2 Baptist preachers. During his sermon, Fugate said, "If you don't want a Christian nation, then go to one of the many nations that are heathen already, rather than perverting ours. America already has its own Bible, and it's our own Christian faith," Fugate said Tuesday night. "You're welcome to come, but leave your religions, your Bibles, all your other things back where you came from." Yesterday,
that's right. Non-Christians have less rights than Christians do.
Today, Fugate said he wasn't trying to denounce all non-Christian religions, just Islam and religions that are anti-American. Islam and America are opposites. They hate us. They want to kill us, he said. "I'm not anti-Jewish or anti-Catholic. I'm anti-Islam because that religion right there is anti-American."
What a hick. Okay, I mean, this guy's just a pure.
And another minister.
You're right.
Russell
He wasn't trying to condemn these other religions. He was condemning them. He wasn't trying. He was doing it.
He was doing it quite successfully.
Yeah. But what's good about this, right, is as you pointed out, a lot of the politicians in attendance are like, uh-oh, and sort of wanted to try to backpedal from this guy's.
But I think there's one of those things where they can't really afford not to. I mean, this isn't just like, this is a Christian nation. This is a Christian nation, and get your butt out of here.
Yeah, and non-Christians not allowed.
It's a little bit over the line.
And so, when it takes its natural course to its end, which is bigotry against anybody who isn't part of the group, then suddenly, oops, it's a problem, and but it shouldn't have to get to this. Before all the people in Washington, I think there were only 3 senators, right, who didn't try to capitalize on the pledge flap and do photo ops on the Capitol steps doing the pledge and everything, and it amazes me that these guys just can't see. Look, the end result of this is we're going to have this whole idea of Christian Americans good. Non-Christian Americans, second-class citizens, and with the full cooperation and endorsement of the law in this country, and they don't seem to see that until they're confronted with a guy who just comes right out and blatantly says this stuff. Then it becomes embarrassing. It's like, hello, hint, hint. This is what it's heading towards. This guy's just gotten there before you have. Okay, this is where it's heading. When you have this sort of when intolerance becomes okay. And
even narrow the playing field, another minister, Russell Anderson, suggested during the event that Catholics aren't Christians.
Yeah. Well, we hear a lot of that too.
Narrow the playing field even more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
right. It's like their particular brand of practicing this religion is the only correct one.
only correct one.
Yeah.
Only one that we will stand for. Leave your other Bibles back where you came from. Hey, buddy.
See, I love it. I get a huge kick out of it when Nimrods like that open their mouths, right? Because it's just sort of, you know, I don't know, it gives us an opportunity to kind of like get all smug and go, I told you so, but, you know, I mean, we don't make this stuff up. We don't.
Yeah.
There it is. It's just, okay, I think the calls are lined up. That one, we can talk about that one a little bit later on. So, so we've given folks an opportunity to get on the boards now. So this is a live call-in show. You want to call and give your feedback, give your opinion. That number live is 477-2288. And let's see, first online is Sean is on line 1. Let's see what he has to say. Make sure you don't get feedback. Sean?
Yes.
Hi, there you are. You're on the air. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right. What can we do for you?
I wanted to talk about the young man who got beaten.
Yes.
You had, I think I caught. Did you say that the two people who perpetrated the act were not family members, but just church?
Yes, they were youth pastors.
Yes,
they were
brothers, actually.
Yeah, but they're pastors at the church, and they're running a camp for Spanish-speaking children.
Blah, blah.
Yeah, and so they're youth ministers at the church. They're not actually members of the boys' family.
Well, I mean, all of the scriptures that you alluded to, and from what I can hear, they really are written to the parent. Not basically, these guys took it into their own hands. They didn't follow what was written in the book, you know.
Well, do you think it's okay for a parent to beat his child until his kidney fails?
No, and that's another thing I had.
So it seems to me the same criticism applies.
Beating in the scriptures, it doesn't really give a degree. I mean, it leaves it up to the parent with an assumption that the parent has a love for a child and isn't going to, you know.
The scriptures basically say as long as he's alive at the end of it, you're okay.
Well,
no, I don't see that. That's not in the Bible, y'all. I mean, you can say that, and really when y'all use words like beating and stuff in reference to that, it makes me wonder.
Well, what do you?
Really
that's what the article says.
Well, Sean, what do you think it means by the rod of correction? What do you think that term means, of rod?
I mean, you know, a spanking. I've got spankings. I don't think it did me harm.
Spanking is your hand.
Well, yeah, I mean,
or a belt, you know, whatever.
Whatever precisely, don't you? The word rod is this nice loose term that I guess can mean either a spanking or it can mean you cut a big branch off a tree and you wail away on a kid.
Well, I think that didn't they use like a willow tree branch, maybe too harsh, but
regardless
regular,
of the type
light thing.
I cannot believe. No, hang on. I cannot believe that you are trying at all to defend what happened to this child.
No. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to defend it.
Well, yes, you are. You're saying, it didn't mean this.
No way.
Oh.
I'm just saying that y'all saying that the scriptures apply to the situation because that wasn't the parent. The scriptures were written to the parent,
If
not
it were
to some yahoo who's going to freak out.
If it were the parents who had done this, we'd go just as hard on them.
Just as wrong.
The parents, that's just as criminal. No, you don't get me wrong.
Okay. Well,
my point was that if it were the parent, obviously the parent didn't do it. You know, it was somebody else. If it were the parent, they would temper a punishment with love and wouldn't, you know, injure the child.
I don't know. I mean, there are many cases now.
Necessarily.
Now we don't know that. Obviously, we don't have any record of these parents were obviously members of this church as well, because if these children were at this Bible study thing, and there doesn't seem to be any history that these parents have of doing this to their kids. So clearly, as you might point out, these parents do not exercise their religious beliefs in such a way as to beat this kid this way. So in that regard, sure, fine. But they might discipline the child and, as you say, temper it with love and not be harsh about it. But the fact is, if it had happened, and there have been cases, where parents, whether they were for religious reasons or for non-religious reasons, or the parents just had all kinds of crazy problems, parents do abuse their children very harshly, and even if it were based upon just pure meanness, or if these were very strictly fanatically fundamentalist parents, it would still be just as criminal. whatever it is,
Definitely.
I just.
Well, that's my whole point. See,
Yeah.
is the difference here is y'all are trying to make this your issue. I understand it was a Christian, so-called Christian, not in my book, but person or group that did this. But there are Christians who believe in not spanking their children, and it doesn't say in the Bible you must spank your children or you're not going to heaven.
Well, it definitely condones
Proverbs
the
is just
behavior.
advice,
Yeah.
All I'm saying is what we have seen, and not just in the scriptures, but there's a very popular best-selling book right now that is a Christian child development book, a parenting guide, which talks extensively about
that one you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the shepherding
Well,
of
see, that's what I was going to say. I don't know how far I can trust you since you say beatings about that book, and you said
read the
beatings
book,
about
guy.
the scripture.
Check
It's
the
not
book
in the
out.
scripture that way.
Go to the bookstore
Check
and
it out
check
if
the
you
book
wanna
out
see.
for yourself and read what it says. I mean, there are passages in that book that talk about, shepherding a child's heart is the name of the book. There are passages in there that talk about that justify the spanking of children as being this biblically condoned thing, but society frowns upon this kind of physical punishment. So make sure that when you hit your child, you go off into some private place and do it where no
that's
one
horrible.
knows.
Yeah, obviously.
I mean,
horrible.
that's disturbing to us. I am
Well,
sure.
I mean, there are
sure.
yahoos that'll whip children, and there are yahoos who can get a book published.
Yeah,
But all I would say is don't accuse everybody. I'm a Christian. I'm not guilty by association.
Yeah.
Though.
No, well,
That's all I'm saying.
look,
No.
I was raised in a Christian family, right? I mean, I didn't get any harsh, violent physical punishment either. I got the occasional smack on the behind when I misbehaved, but we are not implying that all Christians do this or condone it.
Yeah.
But what I am suggesting is that any sort of condemnation of the actions of these two guys who perpetrated this act needs to, you need to look at these scriptures that clearly advocate and condone this sort of behavior and admit, this is where these guys most likely got this from. The church members in this own news article.
Osama can take the whatever it is, the Quran, and no, I don't think it's that, but whatever, and turn it around.
Exactly.
Exactly, but the fact is that the fact that can be done at all means that people really need to re-examine these teachings and say, is this really good? Is this really appropriate? Can these teachings be taken into such a way that that something like this can happen to an 11-year-old child? I mean, if the teachings and the beliefs can be perverted, then it seems to me that you don't have very good beliefs.
I think with these two, it really didn't matter that if they didn't get behind this cause, they would have gotten behind the white supremacist cause or something.
Hey, maybe that you're right.
I think that you have to get the whole message. If they would have read the part where Jesus said to take the plank out of your own eye before you look at the neighbor's kids and the way the neighbors are raising their kids.
Or the one where Jesus says you have to hate your family if you want to follow me.
Yeah.
Take your pick.
You can find a scripture, it seems, to justify virtually anything, and I think that is very much the problem with letting religion make your decisions for you in life. Okay, and when you apply critical thinking and say, gee, I mean, I'm really troubled by this. Yeah. We're just saying people really need to examine this. I mean, yes, condemn these.
If you go to the prisons, how many of those people do you think are in there because they took the scripture and they turned it around and it made them do something bad?
I have no idea.
I think there are probably more people who have no religion and no morals and no.
Actually, no.
Actually, you know what? The most recent survey figures, and this is there's an organization called the Barna Research, which is a Christian polling organization, found that the number of the people who identify themselves as atheists in the prison population is actually lower than the number of people who are atheists in the general population. It's only about it's only about 2 or 3% in the prison population.
Well, it's not just the
Believing in
atheist
God doesn't
population.
presuppose a moral standing, though. But
Yes, but
it's
the
precisely our point.
The percentage of religious people in prison, though, is higher than the general population.
I'm not trying to make a big guilt by association argument here.
Exactly. We're not at all trying to say that people use religion to justify their actions beforehand. However, after you do these actions, you can back it up in your mind if need be. They can be sitting there at night saying, "My God, I can't believe I beat my child today for taking that extra cookie after dinner or something like that."
These
But-
nuts
but
may be
you
able
can-
to,
you can
but you and I
justify
see it, and
it.
we know he was
So.
foolish, and there's no scripture that can back anything up that'll justify what they did.
Well,
There's nothing
there
that.
is.
well, I don't know. I read,
Yeah.
I read several at the beginning of the show that can, I think, easily be interpreted as instructions for the sort of treatment that this boy received.
but
You can
that's
say
what
it
I
was
said.
taken to an extreme, but again,
Yeah,
I
you
think
gotta
that all I'm trying to say is people really need to examine this here.
The
I mean,
language in there is loose enough to where you can
Yeah.
take it any way you want.
and
And if you want to take it as a swat on the butt or you want to take it as a baseball bat,
Here's-
you can do that.
here's just one. We'll just leave you with this one. Okay, and it says, do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. So it's saying, go ahead and
Well, I
inflict
don't
this
think
sort
that's
of...
what it's saying. I think you're taking it a little wrong. but-
I just
That's-
read it.
that's
I
the
just,
Reddit.
I
No,
didn't,
no,
I
no,
didn't.
no, no. You don't. See, I heard you discuss it earlier. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think what he's saying is that you can take it to the point of death. I mean, it
Exactly,
sounds
he won't
almost
die.
sarcastic to me. Not sarcastic, but hyperbole. You know, he's not going to die. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's saying, go ahead and beat your
Thank you.
kid,
He's not
because it's
gonna
not
die.
it's not going to kill him, so just go ahead and do
Yeah,
it.
but how often do we say that? I'll have a drink. It won't kill you. We don't mean if you have a drink, it's going to bring you to death's door.
Well,
Somehow I don't think that's what Proverbs was doing.
yeah, you shall beat him with a rod and
I'm
deliver
sure
yourself from
I'm sure they had all the parts of speech we have now. I mean, that's
Well,
what
I
it
mean-
sounds more like to me in the time.
Well, first off, I don't think the English language didn't exist when this was written.
You know what I
originally
mean?
written, so,
Yeah, but the parts of speech.
yes. But another thing is that, in my opinion, there are a lot of other things that the culture that wrote this book didn't have. It didn't have our concepts of civil rights. It didn't have our concepts of freedoms.
Correct.
It didn't have our concepts, our modern concepts of justice.
And a modern
so, yeah.
Christian must read that with the knowledge of what you just said,
Mm-hmm.
and not become, like you were talking about, a little too backwards fundamentalist. For
Right.
example, I'm sure that y'all were talking about evolution earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Evolution says there was a single cell that split off into two cells. The Bible says God created man, and out of his rib came Eve. What's the difference?
Well, the main difference
Pretty
is,
big one, actually.
Well, the main difference, first off, is that evolution doesn't say what you just said.
Oh, basically, 'cause
well,
we
no,
were,
why
we were
no?
first created from single-celled organisms.
Well, there's some, but they're, but not quite like, it was one single cell and then poof, 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 poof. Okay, I mean, first off, the actual origins of life is not an evolution question. That's an entirely different field. But the evolution has to do with changes in gene frequency in species over time due to adaptations to changes in the environment. We see that happen. That's an
I'm
observed.
specifically talking about the debate, the Christian atheist big debate. That causes all this strife, and for what? God knows what happened. Why do we need to know? And if we
Why do
figured
we
it
need
out
to
so
know?
much with science, why doubt it? I don't see that it diversifies from what God said at all.
Well,
In the
well,
old parts of the Bible, it must be taken more, not so literally, but more of a figurative sense, I think.
okay.
If
Well,
you look at all the
but you know who
way it's organized.
fundamentalists are? Fundamentalists are people who say you take the Bible literally.
Yeah,
they don't
I know,
believe in
that's why.
taking the Bible figuratively, and I think we see the end result in that in what happened to this 11-year-old boy.
Yeah.
All I'm trying to say, the only point that I was trying to make earlier is that Christians who are, and I'm sure most of them will, utterly condemn what these guys did to this child,
Yes.
need to examine what the scriptures say. They need to start asking these questions and say, is this really correct? And to what extent do I take these beliefs either as literally true? To what extent do I think that maybe absolutely everything in this Bible is right or good or wrong, what it advocates? I mean, this is the sort of thing that I think people should simply examine and think about. Think about what it says. That's all.
I think that
This
they
is-
should. If you really had a counter and measured up how many hours these guys spent reading their Bible, I really doubt it would be very much. But if
Well,
you
we
take
don't
the
know
whole
that.
thing
We don't.
into-
We don't know them personally.
Well,
I-
but if you really
regardless.
study it, Jesus, all he talked in was parables. He never came right out and said something. So
Well-
why take everything else so literally?
well, that's what. Well, ask
Because that's what people are telling us to do.
Ask the fundamentalists.
Exactly.
I agree. I
Then we
agree.
agree on the problem that fundamentalism taken to an extreme can be problematic, just like what happened.
Well, of course it can.
Using that book to any extent for your moral guidance is a problem, because if you take it literally, they have really nasty stuff in there. If you take it figuratively, Well, then it's open to interpretation.
Well, even if I take
and
what
if I
y'all
want to
read
take
to
that
literally,
rod
I
as
don't
being
get
a
beating the
baseball
crap out
bat
of
to my
somebody.
to my kid's legs, I can do that because it's justified. Either way, you're going to get bad results.
If I took those scriptures that y'all read to me literally, I wouldn't justify myself beating the crap out of somebody.
Well,
We hope
No
not.
matter how literally I've read it, you know.
well, good. So that means that you are on the road to
I have a
developing
brain.
a sense of morality and ethics that is not dependent upon this book, and I think that's a pretty strong thing. Anyway, we got to get on to our next callers,
I
but we
appreciate
appreciate
you
your
spending so
feedback.
much time with me.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
you
calling.
take care.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, what we talk about. Almost trying to get it. There's. Yeah, the problem with Jeff D. Well, when we went back when he was hosting the show, I always like to refer to the Bible as the big book of multiple choice.
Yes.
And that is exactly the problem with using it as being your moral guidelines, right? Is, as you just said, either you take the scriptures literally, which means that you pretty much have to say, okay, if I beat my child with a rod, he will not die, so I'll just get myself a rod and beat him, and as long as he doesn't die, I'm okay.
Yeah.
If you take them literally, and then horrible things occur, like what's happened here, like what has happened at the roll-off homes, which were the kids, the children's
many years ago.
the discipline camps.
Yes.
That were run down in like the southern part of the state. That
Yeah, we actually had a caller that called in who was in
Yeah,
part of
this
that.
woman, we had a woman call our show who actually, as a teenager, it's one of these camps where like kids who are problem kids, their parents send them away for several weeks of I guess
Hard labor, essentially.
Right. Yeah, and this girl said that she was locked in a room with no lights, where actually she's a woman now, but she said she endured this as a teenager, locked in a room with no lights, where there was a loudspeaker playing roll-off sermons like 24 hours a day, so you couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
So they have sleep deprivation. They make the kids sick. So either you take the Bible literally, and it leads to those kinds of horrors, or you can interpret it symbolically in any sort of loose fashion, which still allows you to justify doing whatever you were going to do in the first place.
Yeah.
Now, I've often found that what you find is people doing exactly that. They already have it in mind to do a thing, and if they're coming from some weird religious perspective, they'll go ahead, they'll do that thing, and they'll be able to point to some strange, and it could be something that's not necessarily harmful. It could be something like a wacky example that I could think of would be at Trinity Broadcasting Network. I used to do this column on the web called TBN Watch, where I make fun of TBN. And they're doing their fundraising pledge drive, where they make it out to where it is their viewers' Christian duty to send them money to put up to buy more satellite time.
Yeah.
And the way they justify this is hilarious. They get a patch. They found a passage in Revelation, which Paul Crouch just interpreted like angels to be communication satellites. He found a passage. It's in one of my columns. It's still
They
up
have
on
wings?
the web. Yeah. No, he talks about how the angels in the sky delivering the message to and he just said, "See, these are the satellites that we're trying to buy time on. So you need to send us money." It's all kooky. It's completely nuts, right? But that is how wild one's interpretations can be. If you want to go ahead and just use Scripture to justify whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Jay is online too. Let's see what you have to say about all this. Hi, you're on the air.
Good afternoon, Martin. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for waiting. Sorry.
The guy you were thinking of earlier was Lester Roloff.
Lester Roloff
was his name,
Okay.
and that was quite a scandal, and it was just a horrible thing.
Yeah.
The only criticism I have of today's show is that you spent so much time with that guy. I wish he would go read the encyclopedia and start with analogy. See if he can figure out what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, it just went on and on. I guess because I had to wait so long.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, when you're sitting on holding the phone going,
I'm going, come on,
Yeah,
at first he starts off saying, it wasn't that big a stick.
Yeah.
Regardless of the size of the stick, it still caused kidneys to fail.
You talk about somebody who can be swayed very easily. I think you just talked to him.
Yeah. Well, we like to let our callers, especially the people who want to critique us, to have their say.
Right.
And engage in a. We've been trying lately to keep the calls to reasonable length.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sure if you're sitting there holding the phone, screaming, "Please let me stop this
Well,
now."
yeah,
It does seem like it goes on a lot. So again, but now you get to have as much time as you like. So,
but only one ear is red. I got the other ear.
well, every Sunday both of ours end up red. So.
Well, that's fine. But no, I live South Austin. I live near that church. It's on Red Street near Joslin Elementary School, and I drive by there quite often. And ever since this has happened, you have not seen any activity there.
Really?
You don't see cars there. I don't know what's going on, but I drive home from work right down that road. It's right off Ben White and Manchac.
Right. The church itself, you mean?
And it just looks completely shut down. But for years I've driven by there and I've seen the kids out there running and playing, and they seem to
Well, according to the article, it still sounded like it was opened up. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I may just be going there, at a different time. Or I know they've interviewed a lot of the neighbors in our neighborhood, or tried to, the local stations, and some people want to talk about it, some people don't. Some people are actually kind of afraid. And
I mean, the people in their homes not being afraid of being interviewed?
That live in that neighborhood.
Sure. Yeah.
And there's also, you have to understand, if you would come by here and drive by this area, there are a lot of homes that have very large signs that are posted in their yards with scripture.
Yeah.
And you drive by there, and I'm on my way home from having a couple of beers or something, and I read it, and I'm like, for like 3 seconds, I'm like, oh no. And it's everywhere, and I did not know. I thought these were all individuals doing it on their own, and then I read in the paper that these were people that were members of that church.
The members, so they give them signs to post.
And they're all different. And there's a very bad area towards the back that's a well-known drug area, and there's a lot of them back there.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot of drug activity going on, but it's just a sad thing all around. And what makes me I don't know, kind of curious is how many times has this happened before where it wasn't this severe?
Yeah, right.
That we
right.
don't know
You can say we don't want to jump to conclusions.
No, I'm not going to jump to conclusions. I'm just saying what if that has happened? And
I mean, if it had, well, you can think of it in terms of, what if it had been just bad enough to where the kid didn't quite need to go to the hospital?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, what if they had spent an hour and a half, say, hitting him on his thighs, so that he didn't get kidney failure. So basically, all he ended up with were big red welts.
Right.
And that would have been a thing that, still, I mean, the parents may have chosen to take the kid to the hospital anyway, but here you had the situation where the kid, I think, pretty much nearly ended up at death's door. It couldn't be ignored.
Right.
It's only by, the quick thinking, I guess, on the part of the parents getting that kid to the hospital that he did not die.
That's true. I don't know if you watched Dennis Miller on HBO. He's on it on Friday night.
No, I don't get HBO. I love Dennis Miller.
He mentioned it, and I mean, it's amazing how big this story grew.
Yeah.
I mean, it went just from local to AP to UPI to national news. And Dennis Miller goes, he goes, can you imagine what they did? He goes, if there is a God, I tell you, when they get up to heaven, if they thought Ted Williams can hit, wait till God gets a hold of them.
Well, yeah, that is a point, but still, to me, the more disturbing thing, right, is that here you have these two guys did this, right? We've seen them on the news, like I've seen photos of them, being let off in cuffs. They have little grins on their faces. They don't seem to think this is that big a deal. The minister of the church is saying that it's all been blown out of proportion.
It's frightening.
Well, Mark, when you're on morphine for 5 days, I don't think it's blown out of proportion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's hard to blow that one out of proportion.
I'd love to be on morphine for 5 days, but I don't want to get the hell beat out of me.
Yeah. Well, Still, all I'm saying is that I just want people to take a really, really sharp look at this and what what can happen when these kinds of beliefs and these kinds of scriptures that we read at the beginning of the show are, are taken and they clearly can be. They clearly can be taken in such a way. If you beat him with a rod, he will not die. We point out, I've engaged in many debates with like Christians either on this show or via email, and whenever I bring up passages in the Bible like this that are really uncomfortable, it's interesting the way they try to sort of pretzel out of it and squirm and reinterpret it and spin it so it's not so bad. And
maybe it was a willow branch.
It didn't really mean this. Yeah, exactly. But when you have the specter of a child with kidney failure in the hospital because he was nearly beaten to death, that kind of makes it difficult to start spinning in that way. And so I want people just to, everyone's angry, to stop and think about why we should be angry.
Let me one more comment and question, and I'll let you go.
Okay.
I don't want to, take up the rest of the show like the last guy.
Yeah. Was he that? What did it seem like? Well, because we're talking to him, didn't seem like.
Well, it's just because I had the phone to my ear all the time. I guess.
All right.
What do you think the outcome of this will be because of where we live in this area? Mm-hmm. Although Austin is actually, I think, rather liberal as far as Christianity. Texas is conservative, but Austin seems to be more liberal. I can't see these guys getting away with this.
Yeah.
Well, no.
And if they, without, doing some serious, without going to prison.
Yeah. Right. They were charged with injury to a child, a felony punishable by up to life in prison.
Right. And the thing is, if they do, they're only 23 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's the scary part.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's scary for them too because they would have a long stay in
no, I mean if they were to get out
to
continue these practices at that age.
Yeah. Well, here's I'm not a lawyer, not a legal expert, so I don't want to start second guessing what may happen in the courts. But what I think will happen is that what will get them the conviction is turning up the radio.
Yeah.
Which indicates that they knew that what they were doing is wrong by the standards and practices of the society in which we live, and so that to me shows criminal intent. And so that's where we're going to get a conviction for these guys. Whether or not they actually get life, who knows? They may not because of their youth. And I'm sure that the church will rally mounds of character witnesses to talk about what great guys these are and how this is such an aberration.
And even again, I don't know how far I'd go with that. I mean, again, life in prison is first offense. That's... It's a tough call, but that
I don't know how tough it is. I mean, what? I mean, the kid. I mean, if the kid had died, then they get life in prison. I guess then it would be murder. Okay.
Yeah.
So where do you draw the line on what's acceptable punishment for giving a kid kidney failure?
Yeah.
Right.
An 11-year-old child.
Don't you get the feeling that they got to the point where they realized that oh my gosh,
and then they took him home and told his dad to continue.
He may die. We better get him home.
Well, I don't think that that happened because by the according to the news articles themselves, they took the boy home and like it plop dumped him in in the doorstep and said, "We think he needs more punishment."
Well,
they said we think he needs more.
The parents to continue.
But by saying that I interpret that as by saying is that they were trying to say that they didn't do that much to him. And then when medical examiners got to him, they realized that the damage they had done.
Well,
it's possible, but 90 minutes is a long time to beat on anything.
Yeah, I mean.
With two, you got to go get your brother. My
Lord! Down.
Yeah, two grown men holding down an 11-year-old child and hitting him for 90 minutes.
Him with a tree branch.
Yeah, it doesn't take much thinking to do it, and so so you're right. I don't know what was going on in their confused thoughts that either justified their doing it while they were doing it or made them decide to stop when they did. But whatever the case, what happened, and I think that they should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and they will be.
Well, I'll let you go. I know I've spoken long enough. One last question: Where's Ray? Is Ray still a part of the show?
We actually.
I like anybody
that him in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I haven't seen him for some time. He comes and goes. He left the show some time ago.
Years ago.
Yeah, he left the show actually at the end of '99.
I remember I used to see him on there. I like anybody that chews gum out of a urinal at a radio station.
Ew. Well,
I don't know if you know that story or not. But,
well, I haven't, but gee, boy,
yeah,
thanks
he
for
did
lighting
it to get tickets from KLBJ one time, and I'm going, that's a man there.
Okay. Well,
Just don't kiss him on the mouth.
well, I hadn't planned on it anyway, but now I'm
yeah, please
even
don't.
less likely to do so. Anyway,
Hey,
thanks for your time,
Great
Jay.
talking
Thanks
to
for
you.
calling.
Yeah, good talking to you. Okay, well, this is all. Let's see who's next. We have. Oh, okay. Apparently, we've been told by the control room, in Texas there's no such thing as life without parole, so it would be a life sentence. They'd be eligible for parole in
so many years.
Yeah, 30 years. So yeah, that's
Okay,
fine.
well.
You know, enough time for them to rethink this. Okay, line 3 is Greg. So let's see what Greg has been. Hello, Greg.
Hey, what's going on?
Sorry to keep you waiting.
Oh, that's all right. Just wanted to pretty much get back to the whole Proverbs thing. I know y'all spend a whole lot of time with that.
Hey, that's why we're here.
Yeah, I'm a Christian, but I'm more of an individualist. I really, the whole institution, I go to a church, but I don't think Christianity should be institutionalized. I think it should be more of an individual faith-based thing.
Right.
And the quotes y'all were using, or the Proverbs y'all were using from the book of Proverbs, I don't know if y'all overlooked it or what, but I mean, the book is called Proverbs. So, I mean, of course there's going to be a lot of interpretations on that. As far as the spare the rod, spoil the child, I see that, and this is my opinion. I mean, I don't share the whole Christian community's view of this, but to spare the rod is to lack discipline, and to spoil the child is its ultimate ruin. I mean, the whole book of Proverbs, in my opinion, is one on wisdom and how to obtain it. In the first few chapters, or the first few books, or whatever it's called, the first few verses, you've got, it's like a father talking to a son. He tells you about wisdom and how to obtain it. And basically it's not being a fool, a mocker, or a simpleton. And it later goes on to define these things.
Right.
And really, I mean, it's going to be interpreted a whole lot of different ways. I mean, if you're a Southern fundamentalist type Christian, which is, I mean, I come across two types of Christians. Well, more or less three. There's your institutionalized one, your Southern, roots, down home, take it literally Christian, and then your, I don't know if you call it intellectual or what, just your individual. You try and you get out of it what you get out of it. I mean, the book name, Proverbs, should, I think, speak for itself. It's a proverb.
Well, here's the problem, though, and well, everything in general, in terms of what you state about, yes, it is open to different interpretations depending upon what sort of Christian you are, right? As you pointed out, the different types. You have everything from the fundamentalists to guys like you who want to more or less kind of follow it your own way.
Well,
but to me,
to follow it my own way would be exaggerating.
Well,
I follow it to the degree of the book. The only thing is, it's hard to, like I said, I'm really pretty much against institutions because it's hard to institutionalize something like the Bible. I mean, that's, how do you define?
Well, it's been done for a couple thousand years. I mean, the church has, existed for...
I mean, but you've also got a book, I mean, totally unrelated to the Bible. You've heard of The Art of War, Sun Tzu, right?
Yes.
Yes. I mean, this is a bunch of quotes and things of Sun Tzu's, Proverbs, his Proverbs on war. Now, there's a whole bunch of strategists and other Chinese militarists that came after him who took their own spin on what he said. I mean, it's still the same thing, but when you look at it from all the different perspectives of each one, you see it can be quite different, but in the same thing.
Sure. Well, again, but see, to me, though, the vagueness of it all
is part of the problem.
Well, for one thing, there are some that I think aren't. Some are more vague than others. Some I think are not really vague at all. But for example, okay, you have this one here. This is Proverbs 19:18. Now on this one it says, "Chasten your son while there is hope, and do not set your heart on his destruction," which means, which on the one hand sounds like, okay, well, this could be taken to mean, all right, make sure that you have a good method of disciplining your son so that he doesn't just completely go wild, and always make sure that you're there, keeping an eye on him before he's gone too far and there's no hope anymore. And do not set your heart on his destruction could be saying, but don't be too harsh and you're disciplining them. So this is one that seems like, okay, well, that's a little reasonable. But then we flip a few chapters hence, and you say something like, do not withhold correction from a child, for if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. You shall beat him with a rod. And so that sounds to me like, implement, weapon.
Stick.
Yeah. And deliver his soul from hell. So there is something a lot that doesn't seem to be left open to too much vague interpretation. It's saying, you shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell, which is
that's
direct. That to me is a direct instruction saying, corporal punishment, harsh corporal punishment. For if you beat him with a rod, he will not die.
So keep on going. He ain't gonna die.
I honestly would have to say, Proverbs are meant to be chewed on. They're and like you said, could you that one you just said, which you said you took very literally, beat him with a rod. If you viewed beating with a rod as the discipline, it's tough. Nobody wants. I mean, could you stand there and beat a child with a rod? Does that sound humane to you?
Well, I couldn't, but we have a couple of youth ministers from this church who did it just
like
fine.
I said, it's an individual thing. I mean, these people. I mean, whether they claim to be Christian or if they truly are Christian or not, that's a sick thing. I mean, that's not.
Yeah.
But I mean, to beat someone with a rod.
But they can justify it after the fact.
It's a tough act.
But but here's the problem. Okay, is that
it's basically saying I believe, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but saving someone from hell, which is the ultimate end that you do not want. The Bible teaches against hell. That's going to be a difficult task.
Okay, here's the problem, though. Okay, the fact is, okay, I'm sorry, did you...
Oh,
Okay. Okay, again, what you're saying, everything that you're talking about, I'm trying to put this in as concise, because I'm just like churning up here.
Proverbs is a big book to try and get
the problem with
minutes,
the problem is the openness to interpretation that you're talking about.
Well,
okay, I mean, what you're trying to tell us, I think, is that look, you can take this many different ways, and if you take it to the extreme,
I'm saying you should take this many different ways. It's not. It doesn't have one way to take it. In the beginning of the Proverbs, like I said, it speaks of wisdom and how to avoid foolish acts. Now, the definition of a fool by Proverbs is someone who is only by his own reasoning. He does not take others' advice. I mean, in a nutshell. A mocker
so
is
don't listen to anybody else. Just listen to what's in your own head and heart.
Exactly, and I mean...
That's scary, though, because what your heart tells you could be, I'm just going to beat him till I'm tired.
Yeah.
Well, but that's the thing. I mean, if wisdom were so easy to obtain, I mean, it's basically a guide. It's something to chew on.
I don't again, the interpretation factor is the problem here, I think. It seems to me that it is extremely easy, again, to quote directly from the King James here, if you beat him with a rod, he will not die. You shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. It seems to me very easy to take that literally. It seems to me to take a pretty strong act of will to say, oh, well, it doesn't really mean use a rod to beat him with a rod when it says you shall beat him with a rod. Again, this is... Well, I mean, I know what you... I know that you're trying to... put a nice face on.
Oh, you're not trying by any means.
You're not trying to put a nice face on what these guys did. I know that. I know you're not trying to excuse. I realize that what you're doing. That's why I'm trying to couch what I say very carefully. I know you're not trying to excuse what these guys did. But the problem here is the very interpretation that you mentioned. You can take what's in the book of Proverbs and chew on it, and you can come up with an interpretation of what it says based upon what your own conscience dictates. But the thing is, when you have, I think, very easy to interpret literally statements like, you shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell, that doesn't leave that leaves a lot less wiggle room, for example, than the earlier chapter where it simply says something like, chasten your son while there is hope and do not set your heart on his destruction.
Well, let's say I'm a Bible thumping devout Christian, and I read that and I say, okay, well, if I'm going to follow everything Proverbs says, then this is my decision. Don't you think I should probably discuss this? I should talk this with other people. I mean, the whole thing was
not according to your definition earlier. You said earlier, don't listen to others, but basically follow your own heart.
No. See, and a lot of this may seem very contradictory, which, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, Proverbs is a difficult book to talk about in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or even an hour. I mean, you know, I've got to pretty much head out, though. Appreciate the time.
Okay.
Yeah. But, well, we appreciate, you know, your call, and feel free to call us back anytime. But we'll get into this a little later on.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Again, it's...
The big problem I have with it is that you can justify these things
Yeah.
after the fact.
This is
Assuming
what-
that he had not been caught and not been, you know, brought to the hospital, these two pastors could have gone home, and they may have the internal feelings that, you know, ooh, maybe I went a little bit overboard, but then they can sit back in their mind and justify it with that.
Yeah. See,
And
what
that's the scary part, is that they're not going to, you know, wake up the next day and say, my God, I cannot believe what the hell I did.
See, this is
But
just...
they're going to wake up and say, oh, well, you know,
Yeah. Just
cool, I'm backed up.
kind of what gets me all flustered about this whole sort of thing is that here's what we're seeing, and I knew that we were going to be seeing a lot of this, is Christians saying, yes, I condemn what happened to this boy, but
Not the
the
book.
Bible is this thing that you can interpret, and it doesn't necessarily
Yeah.
say that. And again, it's all about, let's get the Bible off the hook and make sure that, you know, the book is safe, the word is safe. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, I don't think it can be that easy. I mean, I think that you really need to address the fact that there are scriptures in here, yes, that can be interpreted in very vague metaphorical ways, and then there are scriptures that I think are very direct in terms of being instructions for this kind of very harsh corporal punishment, such as, you shall beat him with a rod and deliver his soul from hell. I mean, that's not like, you know, they're not talking about bendy straws. Okay, they're not talking about tickling him with a bendy straw. They're saying beat him with a rod. There's not, you know, a whole great degree of
Gray area
metaphorical interpretation that you can give to something like that. And it is in these passages where you get the justification for acts like these. In these guys' minds, they can say, "Oh, well, what we've got going on is biblical." Just like this guy Fred Phelps, right? Who has the God hates fags, the hate site, right? You know, but the fact is, he can, if he wanted to, justify biblically his stance. You know, he can point to all the chapters he can point to the bit in Leviticus where it just says, you know, take gay people.
He can do a better job than
stone them
everybody
to
else
death.
out there who can say that what you're doing is wrong.
So I mean, I just don't think you can. Again, this is, you know, and I don't want to like to harsh about this because it's sort of like, but you know, maybe it needs it. Huh? Like, Cheryl is on line one. Let's see what she has.
Just for a second here.
Yeah.
The show is being taped.
That's right. Yeah, we always we have our reruns on Tuesday.
Yes,
have to be
Tuesdays
reminded
at
about
4:30 to 6.
Yeah. Although I don't think it's not going to be this show. I think we run like a week behind.
Yeah, this is going to run like, you know, in 2 weeks from now or something like that.
So Tuesday at 4:30.
Yes.
We have our taped reruns, and so if you miss one, okay. Cheryl is on line one. Let's see if she has an opinion on this. Ooh, almost hit the wrong one there. Cheryl.
Yeah.
Hi. We're sorry to keep you waiting.
Hey, no problem.
Okay.
The timing couldn't be better. I'm the roll-off girl you're talking about.
Oh, hello again. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, it's a very disturbing state of affairs. That poor kid. It just brought up a whole host of ghosts and bad memories. Yeah, and just wanted to bring everybody's attention to the fact that the Roll-Off Ministries is still operating thanks to Shrub.
George W.
The Texas Association of Child Care Agencies. It's a specially created agency on his part to allow only Christian, by the way. That's the only qualification that I understand to operate child care agencies. And so they can bypass state bylaws and whatever other,
While getting tax money.
Right, exactly. And so they're allowed to operate under that umbrella. And so they're still alive and well down there in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Great. Do they still have their wonderful little boot camps?
There are some very disturbing news here on the, actually, Bojo a Go-Go. One of my favorite sites.
Yes.
And apparently in March 2000, there was a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old who were chained together and forced to dig
Hang on a second, 20 and 18?
20 and 18.
Jeez.
Okay, so legal adults now there.
Well, yes. Now, see, the interesting thing about these homes is there are judges in that part of the country, I guess, that instead of, sentencing them to, like jail or whatever time served.
Send them here.
So this is one of the then official like youth boot camp type places that.
Yes.
Oh, joy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
And they were tethered together and ordered by the superintendent to run barefoot through the brush. And because they were plotting to escape, they wanted out of there. So they found out about this plot.
Who can blame them?
Yeah, really. And to get out the gulag there. And they were placed in a pit and forced to dig. And if they wanted time out, they had to jump the length of the pit.
Oh, okay. And
they're one of the, I think the 18-year-old is the one who ended up with fractured ankles, busted both of his feet, and was taken to the hospital there locally. And so...
it's just... can it be more grim than this?
No, it can't be more grim. And when I called, and I think it was about a year ago that I, mentioned my roll-off experience. I prefaced it by saying, well, I thought, this is not an actual representation of, the Baptist. Well, I'm sorry. I think it is.
Yeah, I mean...
I've since changed my opinion.
Wow. We hear a lot of it, like on the show today, right? I mean, there are folks who just, there is the, when the violent act is in your face, and it is difficult not to condemn that, right? I think anybody with a conscience would do that.
That's right.
But there is still this mad scramble, again, to make sure, let's protect the Bible. Let's make sure that, the Bible is shielded from the same kind of condemnation. Because, but it can be interpreted so many different ways, and you don't have to take it to be that way. And if somebody does something like that, well, it's just their sick little twisting of the beliefs. It's like, well, no, I'm sorry. I mean, yes, you can point to nice, vague scriptures, but you can also point to very direct scriptures. And the fact remains that it is something that is very common, I think, among at least Protestant fundamentalist Christians in this country.
It is very common, and I'm living proof of it.
Yeah, and to consider. Well, there is this best-selling book, again, that we've mentioned a couple times now. There's Shepherding a Child's Heart.
Actually, I listened to the webcast of that, and shaking my head, going, yes, I've heard all of that.
Yeah. The things that are in this book, and so it's like, well, where did they get these ideas from? Well, clearly, I mean, as fundamentalist Christians, they're very open. This is what is biblical about spanking. They call it spanking. I mean, the one thing that you can probably positively say about shepherding a child's heart is that I don't recall any passage in there where they say, get a tree branch. Okay.
Well, but still, it's only one step away.
When they say, there are passages in there where they talk about, they depict this strange little dialogue that parents should go through, engage in
mental torture.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not just enough to go, hey, knock it off, give them a little swing. No, it's like you have to go through this weird bit of a dialogue where it's all about, well, now God wants me to punish you because if you were I'd be disobeying God's laws if I didn't spank you. So it's like, let's terrify the child for 5 minutes, and then
beat him.
Oh, but then take him upstairs to someplace quiet, of course, where no one can see, because remember the law. So again, it's just there's this really, really creepy fascination with this kind of physical, corporal punishment.
Yeah.
And we clearly see the passages that justify it. And you can say, oh, well, it can be interpreted differently. Well, maybe it can be interpreted differently, but it's not being interpreted differently in these cases. In your case with roll-off homes, where they're having, they're locking you in a room and they're making people jump over pits and run through the brush. Sure, it can be interpreted differently, but it also can be interpreted this way, and it is being interpreted in this way, and that's the problem. And people need to acknowledge that this is what the Scripture says.
And that's true. And when you talk about interpreting, I mean, Christianity is it's a bloody, creepy religion, at its foundation. So I mean, how you can take something really creepy, like all the scriptures that you've been quoting, and how do you interpret it? I mean, it's creepy at its core, so it's still bad.
Well, and even people who brush that off or say, oh, that's Old Testament, or doesn't really mean that, or it's wrong interpretation.
Yeah.
The religion is still based on a human sacrifice.
That's right.
I mean, just look at the core beliefs of this thing, and it's still pretty disgusting.
Yeah, it's
if you get away from specific, Proverbs, blah 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 says such and such, or John says that.
Yeah,
it's still a human sacrifice.
Sure. Well,
and I really felt for that poor child. I mean, failing at his what was it? Bible training. Something?
Apparently, I've heard a couple conflicting stories. Either he was just. I heard one report that he was cheating on like some Bible quiz, and then I heard another report that said that he was just misbehaving, like cutting up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did not take his Bible verses seriously enough.
Well, the reason that I was put in lockup for an entire week and beaten with a board with holes through it,
Wow.
that left marks on me for 3 months, was because at the age of 14 I was passing notes to my friend, thinking that we had a little Bible band that came to play at the church, and we thought that a guy was really hot.
Uh-oh, impure thoughts.
I'll teach you.
Here's something I want to ask you.
Sure.
What's happened with the Catholic Church sex abuse scandal, right, is that now that all these kids who were molested back when they were little children, now that they're adults, they are suing now, and there's massive legal activity going on, and I'm wondering if you have considered that now, so some sort of suing roll-off homes for essentially, what you endured, and if like any of your friends who were also in roll-off homes had the same kind of punishment, if you've considered, if you've even talked to a lawyer to see about, because sexual abuse, obviously that's a crime, but it seems something like maybe just the kind of corporal punishment might be more legally tricky.
I have reason to believe there was sex abuse too.
Okay.
But I'm not even going to go into that.
Right.
That's a whole different story.
Yeah.
But for my part, there's, I don't know what would be gained. Well, actually, there may be something to be gained. There may be some discrediting.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just what happened with the Catholic Church here in America. It brings this problem that has been swept under the rug for so long out into the light where it can't be ignored.
If it wasn't for George W. Bush, roll-off homes would not even exist in Texas today, because when their accreditation was taken away, they fled to Missouri. And they came back at the invitation of the governor, and then he had this, what is it called? I can't even remember now. The
faith-based initiatives or something?
No, it was an agency. Let me go.
Some other kind of challenge, not the
TACCA, Texas Association of Child Care Agencies. Okay.
Okay. You just
right. So no, there could be perhaps be something there, but money. I never thought of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not the thing that you might necessarily do for financial gain, but the fact is, like, you were wronged, right? Okay.
Oh, I can't tell you.
You were abused, and whatever it was that you did as a teenager that got you sent there in the first place. Still,
nothing. I had no criminal record.
Yeah. I mean, if like I said, I don't. Your actual past is none of my business, but it still doesn't seem like I can think of a reason to swat somebody on the rear end with a board with holes in it, make them run through brambles barefoot, make them jump over ditches, make them dig ditches, lock them in a room in the dark, all kind of, whatever kind of crazy stuff they do, I just don't see.
And the brainwashing, that's the thing I remember the most, was not even the licks, it was being locked in a room, listening to roll-off 24/7.
Yeah, it seems to me, it seems to me that just some sort of your recompense is due you, and I don't know. I mean, if you can if you just talk to an attorney, I mean, maybe he might say, well, it could be difficult because it's not. It's different than the sex abuse scandal in some ways, but in some ways it's not, right? You have this institution.
No, it's very similar, and the only thing that I could think of that it might possibly do some good is to slow down these faith-based initiatives. In our state. I don't know what it's going to do nationwide, but at least in our state, because W is the one who started it. So
open up some eyes as into these are the people who may get money.
Correct.
And this is what goes on, and this is what happens, and Well, we are really, really happy to hear from you again. We got a couple more calls we want to take
And
for the show.
I'll be glad to hang up and let you take those calls.
Okay, but we love hearing from you, and feel free to call back anytime on the
Absolutely.
program. All right?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You take care, Cheryl. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Yeah, it was about a year ago when we heard from her. And
Yeah,
she told us
wow.
this story. In fact, it was the last time we were reporting on these problems with roll-off homes and having to do with the state faith-based thing that Bush got passionate. Let's see what Scott has. He's been waiting a long time. Scott?
Yeah.
Hi, we're sorry to keep you waiting, dude. What's up?
It's all right. It's kind of hilarious. Well, the situation's not hilarious, obviously, but it's kind of hilarious to watch you guys foaming at the mouth to jump on this particular piece of what has happened.
Well, I mean, I don't really see any other way to react. It's
needless to say, it's atrocious behavior. But to have God in your life means to have a conscience, and the closer you become to God, the more conscience you have.
Well, I have a conscience, and I don't have an invisible friend, so I mean, I don't see that the one requires the other.
Apparently, these people's conscience didn't work too well.
Yeah, these people had God in their lives, and they did this to an 11-year-old boy.
Certainly.
I mean, I'm sure there are many religious people who have a conscience,
And who have never done and would never do anything of this kind.
and there are
recognize that.
there
fact.
are
But you know,
some who don't.
there's 10 things that were given to us by God, the 10 commandments, that aren't left up to interpretation. They're very direct rules to live by. And even if Christianity and Jesus and everything was a hoax, how bad off would your life be by having lived by these 10 principles?
Well,
don't
which
screw
10
around
principles?
with your neighbor's wife. Don't kill people.
Which set?
What's so wrong about that?
Well, just setting aside before we get into that, there's nothing wrong with the principles insofar as, let's not kill, let's not steal, let's not be bad to one another, let's not do these things. But those are principles that can easily be derived simply from people working together to form a society. These same principles, there are many pre-Christian and pre-Judeo-Christian cultures, had the same rules against such crimes as, murder and theft and things like that. I mean, those are practical rules and considerations to live by in order for society to get along. I mean, we have to coexist. People need to coexist. And so, for practical purposes, it's very easy to arrive at fundamental moral principles under which to live. Now, again, in terms of, the religious background for these moral principles, I don't really see, or the religious, tying them into some sort of religious belief isn't really necessary because they are practical concerns.
Yeah. And Christianity is just one of 2,000 other religions that took the exact same principles and, wove them into their own scriptures.
Or even if they weren't exactly the same, the fundamental principles of don't hurt other people.
Yeah. There's no religion out there that says steal from your neighbor and then kill him.
Well, there's one. Okay, there's one. Well, Satanism is all about, or well, it doesn't say that, but
It's an actual church of Satan, and it doesn't say anything like
no, but there's an actual church of Satan, but it basically says something like, "Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law." Okay, so that could be, now that's okay. So now that's not good.
Okay, 1,999.
But Satanism is just this weird form of just anti-Christianity where they believe in Christianity, but they just decide to be rebels and do it's kooky and it's dumb. But the point is, you're right. There are thousands of other religions that arrived at the same basic principles, and it all has to do with people coming together in a culture and living and getting along with one another. And we see this in all sorts of cultures all over the world, and so there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that one doesn't need to have, I've told my story about I don't need religion to tell me not to do bad things, and I don't really know that I want to hang out with people who really need religion to tell them not to do bad things.
Well, I'll be the first to say that religion has been twisted by many as a form of control through guilt and other means, but I don't know. It just seems kind of wrong to hold Christianity as a whole accountable for what this kook obviously did to this child. I mean, there are a lot of people out there that live very comfortably in their Christian values and live a very productive life and don't harm anyone.
And absolutely there are. Absolutely there are. And those are the people that we just want to say, please look at some of the things that are in your Bible because it ought to be troubling. And we know that there are, the majority of Christians would deplore this act. But I'm saying, you need to have a little consistency and admit that, a statement that says, beat your child with a rod and deliver his soul from hell, there's got to be something a little wrong with that, just in principle. So we appreciate your call very much, but we're out of time and we got to go. So
you bet. I'm going to say a prayer, you guys get laid.
I don't have a problem with that. All right. Anyway, but hey, it certainly couldn't hurt, if it works for you. All right, are we done? Yeah, we're done. 20 down, 20 seconds, so let's say. This show, again, we're back 4:30 every Sunday, reruns Tuesday, 4:30, Bagel Shop 10:30 for atheists and unbelievers. Christians, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time.
Have a good week.
All right.